My colleague, fellow candidate also from Sembawang GRC, his name is Muhammad Isa. I just call him Mount Isa because he's a rock. I know he was throwing out some catchphrases, or at least one catchphrase at you tonight. I think it was called "Sack That Bugger." I want to add a little bit more detail to it. I want that bugger to go to Johor Bahru. And that bugger is called Bunwan. You know, detail just helps make the message clearer. Dear Singaporeans, what are we? Are we a nation? Are we a city? Are we a city-state? Are we a republic? Are we a country? What has the PAP been doing with us for the last 52 years?
They make money.
They have led us astray. They have failed. In the last days, my colleagues here and elsewhere in the other rallies have been speaking about the rising cost of living. We talk about the numbers, we talk about minimum wage, we talk about how we have become poor in a material way. But because the PAP over the last 52 years has unable to build a nation and forge an identity, we are poor in spirit. They have failed because they run policies that discriminate and divide us into different social groups. I have a vision, my colleagues and I, for a truly multicultural Singapore. A multicultural Singapore with a Singaporean identity that is anchored by equal political participation. Why? Because with equal political participation, you can shape our identity. Now, I take courage from my interactions with Singaporeans over the years. Every time I enter into a small conversation with Singaporeans, and we ask, so who are you? What are you? Where do you come from? Everyone has a story of some mixed heritage. We say, oh, my father is Teochew, but my mother is Peranakan, so I'm a little bit of half and half. Haven't we all heard a similar story like this? Haven't you?
Yes.
If this is the case, why has the PAP made race so important and led us astray from building a true multicultural and cosmopolitan Singapore? They have failed. What I want us to share tonight is the fact that the PAP has done harm to us at two levels, both at the material level as well as the spiritual level. And for that, what do we do? Sack that bugger!
Sack that bugger! Sack that bugger!
pushing us apart. First, racial identification in our identity card. We are a migrant society. We are latently multiculturally. We don't need an identity race card as a compulsory identification in our national identity card. That is colonial stigma. That is a stigma they put onto our forefathers, and the PAP continues to put it on us. About 20% of all marriages currently are mixed marriage. And what do? To confuse us further, they introduce double racial classification. It has no use in building ourselves to a common Singaporean identity. We should have the freedom to define ourselves and not let the government put a racial stamp on our forehead. So I say no to this policy. Second policy, racial quotas for HDB housing. Backward. It makes the exchange of flat difficult if we need to meet those racial quotas. Why is HDB discriminating leases with that policy? That policy doesn't apply to commercial properties. That policy doesn't apply to private housing. Why do you discriminate HDB dwellers? This policy has to go. Ethnic self-help groups. The spirit of helping the community is correct, but it shouldn't be provided in a divisive manner. I say, get rid of the self-help groups in their ethnic form and come up with a national help group that integrates help across the whole community. We don't want tuition classes that are racially homogeneous. We want integration. These racial policies, using three major racial categories, are out of date because the demography of Singapore has changed. You know that. We have new citizens. You have married interculturally. We need to go beyond. We need to set our identity free from the PAP. The last policy I want to touch upon is the GRC and the minority certificate, a matter I know very well. Once again, in this election, I applied for a minority cert successfully. I disagree with the GRC system. I disagree with the being labeled as a minority. I'm nobody's minority. Not the PAP's minority. I'm nobody's minority. But the ridiculousness of that process. Why does anyone has to apply for a minority certificate every election because their race has changed in between? Who issues the minority certificate for the committee that issues the minority certificate? That is the ridiculousness of their policies. Race-based policies are relics of the past. They were an expedient tool by the colonizers to bring in innocent immigrants into hard labor, and we were labeled as such as a result. But the PAP has prolonged this colonial labeling. The truth is, it perpetuates structural racial discrimination because of this racial approach to policies. It creates the majority-minority syndrome that an evolving cosmopolitan multicultural society does not need. Race-based policies take up resources, time, energy, emotional energy, because identity is a personal matter. And when the state labels you and you have no control, it hurts us. That's why tonight I decided I'll move away from the regular discussion on the economy and how it has made us poor, and show and remind all of us there are other fundamental policies that the PAP has put into place and is perpetuating that makes us poor in spirit, and let us keep our focus also on those types of bad policies. I today decided to make public this pledge to you. I am committed to speaking up for you and your family. That's why I joined the SDP. I will speak up. I will speak up when the government is irresponsible with your money. I will speak up when the government tries to ignore your concerns. I will speak up when you are discriminated and divided by unfair policies. Most importantly, I will speak up when no one else wants to speak up for you. 50 years of PAP rule has made us forget how to speak up for each other. Let my colleagues and I serve you as your voice in Parliament. Together, we can start speaking up for Singapore. Vote SDP! And of course, may I just also remind you, I still want to sack that bugger.